basics were.
Yeah.
I think, some of the old ways don't work, but community, having those days of street cleaning,
Yeah.
knowing who your neighbor is, making sure that Mr. Tom on the block, if he's an elder, his wife passed away, that he has a plate.
Right.
I think that that's community to me. And I
Yeah.
think that a lot of times, if we were to have that understanding, knowing who the moms are, your child is acting up and now you see Miss Johnson. I think those things worked. What do
Yeah.
y'all think?
Yeah. What about you?
I think probably for me, one of the most important things that I would like to see is that a lot of our young people being supported with resources.
Yeah.
We're seeing a lot
That
of the
part. Yeah.
resources being taken away. There's a lot of stuff that's going on federally that I'm concerned will at some point affect our communities,
Yeah.
Black and Brown communities specifically, especially like the young people when it comes to education, having different things to do after school, even, just like them having jobs and
Mhm.
stuff like that. So those are my concerns. I really would like to see those resources for our young people in the community, because if you don't support them, you don't meet them where they are, you don't try to have things for them to do, they're going to find things to do that they shouldn't be doing. And if it's a problem with our youth, it's a problem for the whole community. So
Agree.
that's my take.
Fantastic. Well, with that said, it's nothing else left
What
to be
what
said.
about you?
Well, we're going to get into our guests. We're going to talk a
Okay.
little bit about some of the things that's actually happening. We have an election coming up. We have a lot of people that's, out there in those streets and, advocating for, certain policies, certain rules, certain changes, right? And so I'm super excited about having this young man here today that's going to talk a little bit about some of the things that he's doing. So without further ado, classy lady, who do we have today? Who do we have today?
Today we have Larry Krasner, who was born in St. Louis.
Oh,
Uh,
Saint Louis.
yeah, a
Yeah.
distinguished attorney and the current DA of Philadelphia. He earned his degree from the University of Chicago and Stanford Law School, focusing on criminal defense and civil rights. And he has defended the rights of marginalized communities throughout his career. After founding his own law practice, Larry became a passionate advocate for criminal justice reform, holding police accountable
Yeah.
and reducing incarceration while addressing the root cause of violence. Larry lives in Philadelphia with his wife of 37 years.
Woohoo!
Y'all already know what to do. Let's give a warm We Talk Weekly welcome to District Attorney Larry Krasner.
Hey, how are you? How are you?
So, were you talking about me when you said young man?
Young man, that's right.
Yes.
Because I am a young 64.
All
If
right.
that's what you mean.
64 is the new 44. Okay.
Fantastic. Before we start this interview, I like to ask, all our guests, how are you? How you feeling this current days? I mean, now, they ramping up, or you've been out in the streets pretty much every day, all day long with, this election coming up. So how are you feeling? How was your day? Yep.
Well, it was a long day, but it was kind of a nice day because I got to spend my day with outsiders.
Yeah.
I got my doubts about insiders.
Mhm.
I'd rather spend my day with outsiders. So it was a good day because I didn't have to spend much time with insiders.
Insiders. I got you. So let's start with some, let's start with some insider stuff in terms of you per se, as it relates to, your advocacy work and what got you into, just, law specifically. And then let's walk up into where we are today. But we like to kind of like humanize the person who we have here just to get to know them about who they are. So I guess your parents, were they into law? Did they get you in it? Do you have siblings like, yo, you talk real good, we need to know, like, what are you doing? So what got you into that? Yeah.
Well, my parents were pretty idealistic, but none of them were lawyers. And as far as I know, I'm the first lawyer in the family.
Okay.
But I mean, that was a better version of the truth, what you just did there when you said my brothers and sisters would all tell me that I'm good with words.
Okay.
Actually, what my brother said is you just like to argue.
Ah.
Because I came out of college, I was thinking of doing 3 different things.
Yeah.
And he's just like, be a lawyer. You just like to fight with people. You just like to argue.
Mm.
So I became a lawyer, but it actually had a lot to do, because I was undecided coming out of college. It had a lot to do with being selected to serve on a jury
Okay.
in a homicide case, which was actually a potential death penalty homicide case. And by the time I was done serving on that jury, I just knew I wanted to be a lawyer doing criminal justice.
Yeah. Now, your first, you graduate. Well, so you graduate and you come to the position, or you come to the understanding that this is what I want to do. Your first law school, you go into law school. What was that like?
Law school's awful.
No.
Anybody who tells you otherwise, not being honest. And the most awful thing about law school is the other law students that, I got to say, it's like college, I really enjoyed in a lot of different ways, all kinds of different creative people coming from different places, having great conversations into the night.
Yeah.
I got to law school, just kind of like, can you stop name dropping?
Mm.
Can you stop telling me what fancy prep school you went to? I went to public schools.
Yeah.
Can you just stop showing off in the classroom? We've heard from you 3 times. The class is 1 hour.
Mhm.
We need to confine you to 1 time. We don't need to hear you 3 times. So I was not in love with law school, but I have truly loved being a lawyer ever since. I really like to try cases.
Right.
My career before I became DA was spent trying cases 4 to 5 days a week. I thought it was important. I thought it was interesting. I just didn't think I had enough sweeping impact.
Yeah.
And now as a DA, I have much more of a sweeping impact.
Yeah. And how do you believe that impact parallels or supports your initial vision of what you were doing?
Well, every road is windy, but it really is very consistent. I mean, if you go back to something nobody else remembers, but I remember because I did it, which was being at this very studio, the public access cable studio, where I did my announcement in 2017
Yes, I was there.
that I was going to run, and everybody laughed and laughed and laughed. If you remember that, at that time, I said we need to get more people out of jail.
That's right.
We need to work on prevention.
Mhm.
We need to use forensics to solve more cases.
Yeah.
And, even though the details shift, the values have not shifted. We are a significantly less incarcerated city than we were.
That's right.
I can give you the specifics, on this day, which is the 10th of May, 2025, as we're recording this, or maybe it's live, I don't know.
Yes,
Yes.
On this very day, we have fewer homicides than we have had on this day for the last 50 years.
This day.
That's right.
Well, give a round of applause for that, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah.
So, it turns out you can have your safety and
Yeah.
you can have your fairness. We've let 45 people out of jail who were basically innocent people sitting in jail for somebody else's crime.
Yeah.
You can have your safety, you can have your fairness, and you can have your freedom all at the same time. And they work together, because when you stop spending crazy money to lock up people who don't need to be there, now you can fund your public schools, your mental health treatment, your drug treatment, all the, I mean, look, I went to public school. I went to public school, inner city St. Louis, and out here.
Right.
We had a school nurse.
Yeah.
We had a
that's
school
right.
counselor. My classes were usually like 22 people in a class, not 35.
That's right.
That's how you get the work done.
Yeah.
That's how we have to do it. But it's not what we've been doing for the last 40 years, when we took all those resources, all that money, and just built more jails.
Yeah.
My question
Mhm.
is, basically, you've been in the community, you've been to the recreational centers, you've been to the barbershops. What do you think, in your opinion, is the most pressing issue within Philadelphia as far as community?
Wow. Such a great question. Well, pressing issue within community. In many ways, I think community is actually the key to all of our pressing issues. I almost feel like it's not about going into the community to fix a problem. It's more like when we engage community the right way, it fixes most of our problems. One of the things that we have seen in the last 7 years was that when we took this money that we receive because it's confiscated from drug dealers, other people who are committing crimes, and I can't use it for salary.
Right.
So we have to put it back into community to try to fix the harm that criminal activity has caused. What we've seen is there are so many good organizations in the community, little mom and pop, 501c3,
That's right.
nonprofit,
That's
community-based organizations. And when you give them a little money, which is what we've done, and we only give between like $5,000 and $50,000 to these groups, right? And instead of going to the big organizations with the big budgets, you go to the little ones where they've been running off of
That's right.
goodwill and, paying for it out of their back pocket. You get a tremendous return. We just gave 28 organizations little bits of money. The total for all 28 was about $1.2 million. And that now completes almost $5 million of putting money into these little organizations. The work that they do is so impactful. It is so effective.
Yes.
Yeah.
That we are, I'm able to sit here and talk to you at a time when Philly is still the poorest of the big cities, at a time when there's more guns on the street today than yesterday. And yesterday there were more than the day before. And I could keep saying that for the last 50 years. How is it that we have so many more guns on the street 50 years in and we're still broke and we have the lowest number of homicides? And I'm telling you right now, modern enforcement has its place, but investment in community-based organizations, that's how you bring down crime and incarceration. You bring them both down at the same time.
I 100% agree with that. And I think one of the issues that I have always had with leadership was the idea of creating all of these new bright ideas and policies when you have people that's in the streets, people that's in those communities that's already doing the work, that's working, right? And so to move that or to displace that because you believe your idea is accurate or the right one, it does a disservice to the community. And so when we talk about civically engaged in the community, I think that's one of the biggest faults that I see with leadership. Right. And so what do you believe, and what do you believe we can do with sharing more information or, giving the idea that let's look more into those communities, because essentially that becomes the community policing part, right? Ms. Johnson knows Eric, John, Day, and Mark that grew up on that street and can go to, look, I know your parents, y'all better go in the house. I have seen it happen, right? So what do you believe the solutions are as it relates to that?
Well, what you're talking about is that unique credibility and understanding that people who are on the block have.
That's right.
I lived in Mount Airy for 26 years. I lived near the corner of West Horder and Emlyn Street. And I watched kids grow up across the street. I would hire them to shovel snow or cut the grass or this kind of stuff. And some of them came out really well. One of them, young man, got in trouble for stealing grandma's car. But right now, he's had an excellent military career. He has a great life. He's really an expert in very technical things.
Right.
Another one of them actually died young, and he was a drug dealer. And it wasn't, sadly, the only death that we had in the neighborhood of a young person. There was another one, which also occurred. There is a unique ability that people on the block who are concerned about the young people on the block have to bring things together. It's not just solved by naming another government entity. It's not just solved by sending another police officer who doesn't know the community there. No disrespect to the police,
For sure.
because they have a very important role. But what you're describing is real. I mean, I guess I'd be stealing somebody else's phrase, but a village gets some things done.
That's right.
That just don't get done if you act like, well, society is broken, we need to helicopter in and fix it. You have to let society have the resources to fix itself. You have to stop tearing down society. You got to start meeting people's basic needs. And it is true all over the world that when you meet people's basic needs, you have a lot less crime.
That's right. That's right.
The murder rate is down.
That's right.
It's come down significantly since 2021. Could you talk a little bit about some of the work that you've done, especially collaborating with judges, the police department, and the Public Defenders Association, all the work that you guys have done? Could you, for our listeners, could you talk a little bit about specifically the things that you've done to reduce those numbers from 2021 up until now? Because there's people that are like, even the ones that are not as informed and they're not tuned in, they don't know what's going on behind the scenes. They may just hear about the numbers coming down. But can you talk a little bit about what you've done to see that decline?
Sure. Well, excuse me, I got a little bit of a cold, but
Sorry.
it takes
Yeah.
many different forms. And, it includes things like expanding diversion. Diversion is a way of holding people accountable who are basically not criminal, but they made a mistake. And we're trying to steer them in the direction of doing the right thing by not making it impossible for them to get a job. You get a conviction, especially for a felony, you may be unemployable the rest of your life. And that's, if you're out shooting people, too bad. But if what's going on is you made a mistake, you're basically a good person, then I would rather make you work really hard and end up with no conviction,
Mhm.
because I know that in the long run, society will be safer if we do that. So we've done a lot with diversion. We started a restorative justice program that never existed before. We started an immigration unit to deal with the issues of victims, witnesses, and also sometimes defendants who are undocumented. We've done a lot of that stuff, but what I think a lot of people probably know the least about is what we have done in terms of using forensics. In other words, using cutting edge science to solve cases that were not being solved before. And it's pretty clear in my mind that what we've been able to accomplish there is permanently shutting down certain shooting groups that, many of these shooting groups have gone on for decades in Philadelphia. And the police would get an individual in that group for a murder or for a shooting, take the individual down, but the group went on. Yeah. And it even went on to the point where you had the grandkids of whoever was in that beef 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And they're beefing, but they don't even remember how it started. I mean, it went on like that. But it's a different world when you have cameras in a lot of places, when you have license plate readers in the city that are looking at publicly visible license plates and they're charting the time, the location, the date they were in a particular place. When you have cutting edge DNA that will allow us to get tiny amounts of DNA off of things you could hardly even imagine. Things like a fired cartridge casing. That's the brass end of a bullet that flies out of a semi-automatic gun when you fire it. Imagine a world where you can have a bullet, have an explosion, get incredibly hot, fly out of a gun, bounce on the sidewalk, and we can pull DNA off and know who loaded it. I mean, that's just an amazing thing. Wow. So, when you start to have a bunch of machines that will crack open cell phones, they'll get past passwords, and now you're able to put together an entire case off of things like the geolocation that's in that phone that shows where the phone was at the time of the shooting. Where was it before? Going towards the shooting. Where was it during the shooting? At the shooting? Where was it after the shooting? Running away from the shooting. This is how you start to solve crimes that were never solved before. It's how you start to make it so that young people who are thinking of picking up the gun tonight decide this is not the night. It has made a tremendous difference. So for me, prevention is absolutely key. But it's also key that Philly catch up with other cities and that we have the ability to solve more cases, leave more mothers with answers about whatever happened to their child than we have been able to do in the past.
So are you concerned about any of the things that could be coming down the pike when it comes to some of the executive orders that have been passed affecting what you're doing? And if you're elected, what you plan to do?
Well, I'm very concerned about that lunatic we have in D.C. I mean, let's call it what it is. You have an orange man with gold shoes whose hair goes backwards, and this dude, I mean, frankly, if he came to my house in Mount Airy and he wanted to sell me anything, I would say get off the property, and that would be the first time I saw him before I knew who he was. I can't even understand the suit. I can't understand why the tie hangs down to his knees. I can't understand why anybody believes a single word this wacko says. So I'm very concerned about him. But, and I think he fully intends to try to take over the government of the United States. I think he fully intends to carry out a military coup, but I also think he's going to fail. Okay. I think what's going to happen is the public are going to get more and more sour on what a nut he is. And that by the time we get to the midterms, the Democrats are going to take back the United States House, which is now controlled by Republicans. I think they're going to take back some of the spots in the Senate. I think we're going to see the public get more and more disgusted with how this man is trying to rip off everybody and break everything. So I'm hopeful in that regard. But in terms of his specific executive orders, well, let me see. One of them was we're going to end birthright citizenship.
Yeah.
And the court said, no, it's in the U.S. Constitution. You can't just write crazy on a napkin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other ones that he's come up with are that he's going to order local law enforcement to do immigration enforcement. And the answer, once again, is no. The 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution says you can order federal law enforcement to do it. Not many of them, but you can't make local mayors, local police commissioners, local prosecutors do it. And I've already said publicly many times, no, it is not my job to do your job. I'm going to stick with the homicides and the rapes. Thank you.
Right. That's right.
You can spend your time dragging people who, for the most part, are just here to try to support their kids and and be able to eat.
Right.
You can drag them out the front door so long as you do it lawfully, but I ain't helping. Right. So, once again, people talk about how he's going to cut off money to sanctuary cities or welcoming cities or constitutional cities, call them what you call them. He tried this in his first term. He tried it against Philly. He lost in the courts. The courts at that time said, you can't do this. So he writes a lot of stuff. He holds a Bible upside down. He's got funny hair and silly clothes. And he wears a girdle. I mean, let's be honest. We all know that man's wearing a girdle, right? But I'm just not that intimidated by this foolishness, and if he wants to lock me up, I hope you all visit me.
Yeah. What's funny about this is that, you stand 10 toes down as it relates to truly supporting and protecting the community. I think, and this is a personal opinion, not necessarily reflecting views that we talk weekly, but what I will say, however, is because we talk weekly is nonpartisan, right? We don't pick any sides. I always say that I'm always for the person who I see that's actually in the streets that's doing the work. And I see you doing the work. I believe that you have been getting an unfair rap, so to speak, as it relates to the work that you tirelessly do for the community. I want to know your opinion or your feelings or opinion on, the perception that some have of you, your naysayers, but those that's in my circles don't necessarily feel that way, right? And so it's starting to look very peculiar as it relates to, and dare I say, conspiracy, but it does look really peculiar when I see people who are really supporting the community, helping the community, but you have a mass amount of kind of like wave of, well, that person isn't right. Something is wrong with that. What is your position on it or your take on it?
Well, my mother was, I come from a very interesting background, but my mother was an evangelist. She was a tent preacher. Among other things, she used to say, you're doing something right when you angry up the devil.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I was just talking about Donald Trump, so I guess that's the devil. Because he does have Philly in his mouth and got my name in his mouth now and then too. So that's kind of how it happens. What do I think about that? Well, I don't want to be so dismissive because that's not fair.
Right.
But, I did start this whole thing by saying I had a good day because I was with the outsiders. Okay.
That's right.
You're talking about the 1.55 million people in Philly who are outsiders. There's probably 50,000 who are insiders. And the heat that we get is usually coming from people who are making a lot of power and they're making a lot of money off of things continuing the way they were under Seth Williams or under Lynn Abraham. For example, I got impeached, I say, by the Pennsylvania legislature, meaning a whole bunch of Republicans who live in counties that are either named after coal or they're named after elk, right? Those dudes.
Yeah.
Well, they wanted to impeach me and they said from jump, well, he didn't do anything corrupt.
Right.
He didn't commit any crimes. That's not the point. We don't like his ideas.
Yeah.
We don't like his policies. Do you know why they didn't like my ideas and my policies? Because they make a lot of money off of having the 13,000 Philadelphians who were in their state prisons
Yes.
there. They make $60,000 a year per person, locking them up. And now we're not at 13,000. We are at 9,000.
Yeah.
So, they are boohooing like you haven't heard about the possibility they might have to close a jail. These are Republican leaders who have failed their people. When coal disappeared, they didn't have an answer. When steel disappeared,
Yeah.
they didn't have an answer until they decided, we got it.
Mhm.
Let's take a bunch of people from Philly, lock them up here, and make money off of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because their address becomes the jail where they live,
Yeah.
not the Philadelphia where
Mhm.
they stay.
This
Correct.
is a very important point too, that when you take a Philadelphian and you move them to another
The county.
county
Yeah.
in, I think, 48 out of the 50 states, that person is counted as living in, you know,
That's right.
Elk County or whatever it is.
Mhm.
And that gives them highway funds.
Mm.
And that gives them more political representation.
Mhm.
This is highway funds for people who can't drive because they're in jail.
Right.
This is political representation for people who can't vote yet because they're serving a sentence
That's right.
Mhm.
and they're in
Mhm.
jail. It's a
Mhm.
pretty twisted up system.
Yeah.
So they're not only filling their tax base with taxes from correctional officers, because that's the only employment these loser leaders have been able to manage for their county,
Right.
but they're getting all kinds of power. And we all know what's going to happen to the, I said it, loser leaders
Yeah.
who, if they don't succeed in keeping these prisons
Yeah.
full of people who don't live there, because
Mhm.
heaven forbid, they don't want to lock up people who live in their own county. Those
right.
people
Mhm.
might vote against them. Their families might vote against them. So what they want is a nice conveyor belt of Philadelphians out to their prisons
Mhm.
who they can incarcerate for as long as possible, get all that money in and stay in their office as a state rep or as a state senator. Well, we stand in the path of that.
Yeah.
We've reduced the number so drastically that it's literally worth billions of dollars they're not getting. They're starting to hear about prisons closing. That
Mhm.
means they might lose their jobs. And what do? They do what they do. So, to me, that is actually good because it means we're having an impact. We
Mhm.
angried up the devil.
I think that's a
Mhm.
great, and I want to talk about this quote that you mentioned on an interview from, I believe, the Young Turks. I have my own views on that, but you said we were able to stop our jails from becoming super spread of COVID, which was an additional and very important factor. And right now, we are enjoying the lowest number of people in county custody that anyone seems to remember. We used to have almost 10,000 people in county custody. We're down to 3,600, and yet we simultaneously have lowest numbers of homicide in 50 years. I thought that was pretty profound. Why do you think that's one of the facts? That's a fact, ladies and gentlemen. Why do you think that's one of the facts that we don't hear about as Philadelphians as it relates to your office?
Well, I mean, I hate to say it, but unfortunately, there has been a long history of not having really accurate politics, entertainment, or reporting. Just to give you another example, this is probably something you've never heard, but it's something I didn't know until I had some people who do data in my office check it out. Do you know that the homicide rate in the Republican states, which are the states that voted in the last presidential election for a Republican president, the homicide rate in the Republican states, Republicans, the ones who supposedly are tough on crime and they know how to fix everything, homicide rate is 133% of the homicide rate in the Democratic states for the last 25 years.
Wow.
24 of those 25 years, you have been in more danger of being murdered in a Republican state than in a Democratic state. That has never come out of the mouth of Bill Clinton, Joe Biden, or any Republican. Instead, we get to listen to Richard Nixon, a criminal, talk about law and order, or Donald Trump, a 34-time felon, talk about law and order. That's a problem that our society does not know that, and this is not just about politics. Those Republican states have a set of policies. They love the death penalty. They want everybody to have guns. They don't want social programs. They don't want public schools. They don't want to allow, choice about your reproductive rights. It goes on and on. That's what they want, and that kills people. And yet you probably have never heard that before.
Haven't.
Because it's just not covered as fully as it should be.
Wow. Here's another quote from you, which was very interesting. You said, we know that the length of sentencing is not really a deterrent, but what is a deterrent is fear of getting caught. That's about how many of these cases you can solve and whether you can solve them quickly or you're only solving them 30 years later. When we think of that position of the fear of getting caught, what is the impetus of that? Is it that, oh, I'm getting caught, so I'm gonna go to jail? If we're saying that once you're in jail, we don't care about how long we're in there.
That's a really fair question. I'm not saying that there should be, I'm not saying that kill somebody get probation is the same thing as kill somebody get 20 years. I'm not saying that.
For sure.
What I'm speaking of is more like, does it really matter whether it's 25 years or 20?
Yeah.
Does it really matter whether it's 25 years or 15?
Mhm.
And all the criminological research shows that what really stops people from picking up the gun on a Thursday night is that they're afraid they're going to get caught. They're not actually sitting there saying, well, I'll do it and get caught and do 15.
Mhm.
But if you're telling me there's a mandatory 25, in that case, I'm out. Nobody is signing up, for a lengthy sentence. And this is, after all, the most locked up, incarcerated big country in the world. It's also one of the most violent countries in the world, locking everybody up for long periods of time when you have low rates of solving them. There are places where homicides are only solved at a rate of 10% or 20%. There was a study of shootings of African-American men in Philadelphia. They looked at 5,000 shootings over a period of years. 1,000 were solved. 1,000. How scared is someone of a 20% chance of getting caught? A little bit, right? Not nothing. But wouldn't they be a whole lot more scared if it was 45% or if it was 52%? Isn't that more like, come to think of it, I'll just sit here with my PlayStation instead of going on that drill because my knucklehead friends told me we should.
Why do you think the Philadelphian, especially within the youth of Black men, ages 18 to, let's say, 35, is very low for voting? Why do you think that is? And why is it important for them to come out and vote?
That is a really interesting question. And I think, strangely enough, I have an answer. And that is this. I think there are an awful lot of people who don't vote at all or who are unlikely to vote because they don't feel like government has done anything for them. They feel like everybody chases them for a vote and then goes away. And I mean, I'll be honest, a lot of them are right. That is kind of what happens. What we have seen, though, when I ran in 17 and in 21, and I hope what we're going to see again pretty soon, is that there's a lot of people out there who are really touched by criminal justice issues. Hundreds of thousands of people who have suffered a conviction. Not all of them deserved it. Some of them absolutely did, but they've had a conviction. It's affected their life, or someone they know whose drug addiction was not addressed properly and died of a fatal overdose. People thinking back on the person they dated in high school who now is unemployable because he sold, 12 bags of drugs on a street corner and now can't get a job. This is an issue that really touches a lot of people who don't necessarily vote. And what we saw when we started talking about these issues the way we do talk about them in 2017 is we saw a huge increase in voting. Okay. So, for example, when Lynn Abraham and Seth Williams were running, and they run in the same election cycle as we do, which is, one where there's no governor on the ballot, there's no senator on the ballot, there's no president on the ballot. So it's expected to be a low turnout. Well, Lynn Abraham and Seth would bring out 9% or 12% of the vote. So we run in 2017. And lo and behold, we bring out 19% of the vote. And then we run again in 2021. And everybody's saying, you'll never get that turnout. You just got that big turnout because of Donald Trump. Joe Biden had just been elected in 2021. So Philly's happy because Philly loves Joe and hates Trump, right? You'll never get 19%. We got 20.5%. Okay. It's the same phenomenon that we saw after the United States Supreme Court decided the case that took away, some reproductive rights. And you saw all of these young women who would not necessarily have voted otherwise. And not just women, but you saw a lot of people, most of them women, including ones who don't always vote, coming out to vote, coming out to march. So fundamentally, what has happened here is the parties have failed to connect with a lot of young voters on the issues that matter to them. And I regret to say, as a lifelong Democrat, the Democratic Party has failed in that too. That's part of the reason it's so important when you have a race that's simple like this one is. This race is about criminal justice,
That's
fundamentally.
right.
There's some judges on the ballot.
That's right. That's right.
There's a DA on the ballot. That's what it's about.
Mhm.
It's so important to engage young people who care about those issues, to get them registered, get them to vote the first time. Because once you vote the first time, it is habitual.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's easy after the first time you do it, and you want to do it after the first time you do it.
Yeah. The Meek Mill bill, Act 44, probation reform. You've been involved in that. How do you think, because now we're starting to see some progress with those cases in Pennsylvania, how do you think it's going to affect the success rate of probation, the recidivism rate, and prison reform, which you've also been working on?
Well, I can tell you that the criminology, the science around this is that the first couple years of supervision for someone on probation or on parole coming out of jail, those first couple years clearly do some good. The third year, it's kind of a wash, does some good, does some harm. But after 3 years, the criminology all says it just makes things worse. Not in every single case, but on average, it makes things worse. It tends to become a bunch of tripwires that people who are getting it together trip over, and then they end up back in jail. The things that really help are having close connection to family. It's having employment. It's being able to pay your bills. And if you think about what happens on probation and parole, sometimes you have to pay for your own supervision. You have to leave your family and leave your work to go to check in with a probation officer, which is not the best thing for your employer or hanging on to that job. And let's also remember, there used to be an awful lot of people going back to jail for what? Because they had THC in their blood. They'd smoked some weed. So here we have Judge Grumpy sitting up there. This man took down a nice chunk of a bottle of brown liquor the night before, because some judges do that. And he thinks some hardworking guy is the devil because he's got a little bit of THC in his blood, and he's sending that man off to jail because he doesn't know the difference between weed and heroin. Okay. That used to go on all the time.
Wow.
To some extent, it was generational. To some extent, it just had to do with people living in totally different neighborhoods, in different economic status, different kinds of experience. But to some extent, it was straight up discrimination. It was just Richard Nixon's crazy playbook all over for how he would get at the people who weren't his biggest fans. And those people, of course, were anti-war protesters and black people. And, to some extent, it's that. So sometimes it's good not to give judges so much control over the life of another human being forever. Let's do what is scientific. We know it helps to do proper supervision for the first 2 to 3 years, which is part of the reason that my office has a policy since I came in that you shouldn't do more than 3 years of supervision unless there's a good reason approved by a supervisor, unless the science supports it, or unless there's special circumstances. Just our policies have really reduced the amount of supervision by almost 2/3. And then the Meek Mill bill, as you put it, that is doing a lot of good too. It's relatively early in its effects, but I think we're going to see some very positive effects, especially if the Pennsylvania legislature continues to come with more good ideas.
Fantastic. You mentioned, I just want to back up a little bit, because we were talking about voting and the importance of vote. One of the things that I'm very hard on is me feeling this particular election, right? Because it is a closed primary. And so everyone don't know it's a closed primary. We talked about the effects of closed primary. So, but that said, there's a lot of, there's little to no promotion, so to speak, for this particular election. We look at, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris in the presidential election. Everyone is, yes. This election, no one even knows who the judges are. People know the DA, of course, but, we talk about people who's running, and these are most of the judges, right? Judges who potentially can be appointed later on to the Supreme Court that we're saying that we have a problem with right now, right? Why do you think there is no amplification during this election like it should be?
Well, my wife actually ran for judge back around the year 2000, and she won. And she was on her second try, and she was on the bench for almost 19 years. She was actually an excellent judge all the way through, but she also was a political outsider. like I
Mhm.
was. Unfortunately, this city has a pretty sad tradition of having the leaders, well, one leader anyway, of the
Hmm.
Democratic Party pick people who are somebody's
Mm.
nephew or
Mm.
pick people who did free work for him for the last 10 years.
Mm.
That is not how you pick the best judges in the world.
Mhm.
Right.
The way you pick the best judges in the world is on their character,
That's right.
it's on their values, it's on their educational achievements, it's on their experience, it's on their life's work.
Mhm.
If they have been civil rights attorneys for
Mhm.
outsiders,
Yeah.
if they have represented disabled people, if they did educational work for kids who are on the spectrum,
Mm.
if they
Mhm.
spent their career doing other kinds of public service, genuinely directed at improving the world rather than just trying to line their pockets.
Yeah.
In my opinion, those are the people you want, right?
Mhm.
But that's just not how it's worked.
Mm.
It has been a patronage machine for the longest. And unfortunately, sometimes certain leadership in the party will get behind candidates because they got money, because they're somebody's nephew, or because they did free work. And that's just not the way to do it. There is an answer to all of this, but it's a tough one.
Yeah.
The tough one is because you're electing several judges every election cycle. This time it's going to be about 10 or 11 judges.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because you're doing that, they're almost all unknown people to the general public because they've just been working away as lawyers somewhere.
Yeah.
They don't usually have a ton of money to
Mhm.
get the message out about who they are. And there's kind of a long, sad tradition of people either, just picking people because they like that gender, or just
Yeah.
picking people because they think that last name sounds like their last name,
Mhm.
or just picking people because, the Democratic committee person, the Democratic ward leader told them to.
Yeah.
Sometimes those ward leaders and committee people are doing exactly the right thing and they've carefully studied them, but we all know the reality. Sometimes they haven't, and they're
Mhm.
just being told from above what to do because somebody got some money in the back pocket.
A young guy comes to you and he's disgruntled, or he feels that I shouldn't vote, right? I don't care about voting. Why should I vote? I know you're running, but I'm not voting anymore because my vote doesn't matter. What would you say to him?
Well, I mean, if I was a smart ass, I'd say who were you going to vote for, and then I'd take it from there. But no, all right, let me give you a serious answer. What I would say is what the great Marion Tasco, who was a city council person here and one of the greatest political minds of any generation in Philadelphia, would say, which is vote like your life depends on it, because it does.
Mhm.
It does.
Yeah.
I mean, we are being affected in the most fundamental ways
Mhm.
by having the wrong guy in the White House, by having some of the wrong legislators.
Right.
This city will never get what it deserves from some of this upstate crew unless we are able to show big numbers. It's, if you want to look at the communities that have been the most ignored, the least served, the most damaged, they are overwhelmingly the communities that have not voted. It is something that has gone with poverty for a long time. It goes with other things, language barriers and so on. But I get it. This is probably a young person who has lived in a neighborhood where it doesn't seem like voting makes any difference.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem like government makes any difference. I get that.
Yeah.
But I would just hope they would imagine a world where a lot of these problems are getting fixed, where you don't have trash being dumped everywhere, where you do have a proper class size, where you can get the medical treatment that is necessary, where you don't have the entire city coming up with tax breaks for Comcast that are not available to ordinary working people, that sort of thing. And I guess that just sounds like a 64-year-old guy talking in a way that's not persuasive. But I would also invite him to go to the polls with me, because I'm telling you, for anybody who has not voted, the first time you vote, you get it. You start to understand what is at stake, and you start to feel that excitement, and then it becomes a habit that you're going to keep.
Speaking of elections, right? Speaking of the polls, you're running against someone, right? Dugan, I believe, right? Is it Dugan? Did I say that right? Dugan? So
I'm having a little trouble remembering his name right now.
So in all fairness,
did you say who?
In all fairness, right? Because we're nonpartisan, and so we try our best to be fair across the board. But in comparison to him, why should someone vote for you versus your competitor? What makes you stand out as the candidate for people to continue to have as DA of Philadelphia?
I think it's really the difference between actions and words. You know,
Mhm.
words are really cheap
Yeah.
in a political cycle. I still can't figure out whether my opponent is the great reformer he claims to be or the hang 'em high law and order guy he is in the next sentence. You know, he talks a real good game about police accountability, except for anybody who's familiar with the Josie case, which is an
Mhm.
I was just
infamous,
gonna write-
infamous case in Philly.
Yeah.
You know, he's the judge who said not guilty after he watched the video that made it crystal clear
Mhm.
how guilty that much larger and brutal
Yeah.
officer was, right?
Mhm.
So I think ultimately you got to look at people's life's work. You got to look at what they have done
Yeah.
rather than just listen to their words. But another way to look at it is real simple. He just talks over and over and over about doing things that are old, about going backward.
Yeah.
We can't go backwards.
Mhm.
This is a country that was the most incarcerated big country in the world and also hyper violent.
Mhm.
Philly's moving in the right direction. We
Yeah.
have far fewer people in jail. We have far fewer homicides. What is the issue?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm.
You've lived in Philadelphia for many, many years now. What makes this city feel like home to you?
Oh man,
Yeah.
I mean everything. Everything makes it feel like home to me. You know, I do a lot of travel to recruit. We
Mhm.
recruit lawyers all over the country for a whole lot of reasons, including getting the best talent and getting really diverse talent. We go all over the country.
Yeah.
And so I get to see a whole lot of cities. Some I know, like I know Chicago because I went to college there and I love Chicago. It's actually the city that reminds me the most of Philly.
Mhm.
Um,
I can see that.
Other ones where I've never been, right? But a lot of people don't understand that this is a city with so many positives. It's a city where a lot of people are walking around. Spend some time in LA. You think LA is nice? You better like the inside of your car because that's where you're going to be.
Yeah.
All the time.
You know, it's a walking around city. It's a city where people, even if they have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, because that's a Philly thing,
It is.
they will
Philly
talk.
grit.
They
Yeah.
got grit, but they will talk to you at that bus
That's
stop.
right. That's
They
right.
will
Yes.
talk to you
That's
on
right.
jury
Right.
duty. You know, they will engage with you on the street.
Yeah.
It's a very affordable city.
Mhm.
This is a city that has a great restaurant life. It has a great musical and cultural history.
Mhm.
You know, it's one of the better cities for riding a bike around, actually, in the
Mhm.
United States, and which is important to me because I like to ride my bike.
Mhm.
It's just, you know, it's just a city that is very, very livable. And I got to tell you, I remember the bad old days of Frank Rizzo.
Oh,
I once even met Frank Rizzo, you know.
Mhm.
Philly's so much better,
Mhm.
so much better than it was in the late 1960s.
Yeah.
It's so much better than it was even in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
It just keeps getting better. There is a reason why a lot of us consider the 5 boroughs in New York to be the boroughs of Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Mm.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. You know, we say in Philly, we just say we're our own city and state. We're our own city and state.
Yeah.
Here's a question for you. Favorite cheesesteak?
Ooh, D'Alessandro's.
Ooh,
Okay.
okay. All right. No doubt.
Yeah.
Where were
Okay.
you when the Eagles won?
Jumping up and down in my living room.
Me
You know,
too,
I
me
try to
too.
keep my athletic viewing near the kitchen.
Right. All right.
That's
Mhm.
key to me.
Mhm.
I find it more affordable as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, D'Alessandro. Everyone,
Yeah.
shout out to D'Alessandro's.
Mhm.
If someone asked you, what is the legacy that you would like to leave? Right? How would you answer?
I shouldn't say silence, right? What is the legacy?
It's the legacy.
Safer,
Okay.
fairer, freer,
Mm,
and now he gets to sit on the beach. How about that?
I like that.
fantastic.
Mhm.
Fantastic. All right.
What are some of the biggest, or what would you say is the biggest misconception about District Attorney Larry Krasner?
Yeah.
What's the biggest misconception? I mean, like this could be a book, right? There's a lot of
Yeah,
misconceptions. And I'm not trying to avoid your question,
Yeah.
but honestly, I
No.
guess I don't really know.
Mhm.
Because what I tend to know is what I do every day and what the numbers say.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's kind of the world where I live. I don't
Yeah.
actually spend all my time watching, you know, late night local news
Mhm.
or hanging out at the Mayfair Diner to hear what the diners there might say, which might not be 100% positive, you know.
Sure.
I don't know exactly, but you know, I
Mhm.
do think the most important thing is just put your head down and do the work. Keep
Mhm.
moving. Don't get too bothered when people say things that are untrue or
Mhm.
say things that are inaccurate.
Mhm.
I get more irritated at myself when they
Mhm.
say things that are true,
Mm.
that are mistakes I made. But I also know I make mistakes every single day. I mean,
Mhm.
that's just how it is. You have to. It's all about trying. It's
All right.
about trying to be fair. It's about trying to do the right thing. It's about putting in the time. It's
Mhm.
about connecting with community. It's about outsiders.
Yeah,
That's
That's
fantastic.
right.
Mhm.
So I just want to thank you for coming to the show. I know you're very busy, and I know it was some challenges in getting here, and so I really appreciate your time. Um, I'm gonna give you my last question that I normally give to, you know, guests that I like, right? And I happen to like you, right? So the question that I have is, I want you to dig deep into that, that library information. What's the one thing that no one else knows about DA Larry Krasner? No one else knows that you could tell us today.
Well, there's some things I can't
You
tell you.
can't say.
We won't get into that. But what's the one thing that nobody knows?
An exclusive.
Yeah.
Exclusive. I was friendly in grade school
Mhm.
with a girl who does not professionally sing by the name under which I knew her
Mhm.
when we were both in elementary school.
Okay.
But she has gone on to be a Philadelphia-based, nationally significant singer, and I will not tell you who she is.
Then you
Oh,
didn't
what?
tell.
Right. So
All
now
right.
people gonna be googling. Well, where
I
did
know,
you
right?
go?
It's
How old
like-
was he?
All right, there you go. We talk weeklies after
Right.
talking WPPML.
Can I give a shout out real quick?
Yeah, well, no doubt. Give a shout,
Shout out to United for Strife. Thank you so much, DA Larry Krasner.
Yeah.
And when is the voting coming out?
We're gonna
The-
get there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No,
all
go ahead.
right,
No,
yeah,
finish. Go ahead. You just go.
that was it.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you could, kind of, let people at home know like the vote and that
Yeah,
information.
all that good old stuff. Where to vote, when to
Yeah,
vote,
where they can-
how they can get in contact with you, all that good old stuff. Yeah.
All right. Well, number one, voting day is May the 20th. May the
Right.
20th of 2025. That
right.
is a week from Tuesday. The polls will be opening at 7 o'clock in the morning.
That's
They
right.
close at 8 o'clock at night, but not exactly, because if you're still in line at 8 o'clock at night, they will let you vote.
I didn't know
Do
that.
not
I
get
didn't know
out
that
of
either.
line.
Yeah.
Do not get out of line.
Wow.
Now, here's another important thing for people to know, and that is that even for people who have been in jail
Yeah.
for an offense,
That's right.
if you are in county custody and you're waiting for trial, you can vote. You can
Mhm.
vote before you are convicted of a crime. If you are
Mm.
serving a sentence of jail, you cannot vote while you're serving your jail sentence, but you can vote as soon as you get out of custody. There are a lot of people who have an old conviction and they are under the false impression that
Yeah,
they
they
can
Mhm.
never vote.
Mm.
Wrong. In
That's right.
Pennsylvania, if you're not locked up, then you can vote even if you have a prior conviction, which is how it should be.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
otherwise we're going to have a bunch of, we're going to be disqualifying so many people from voting, and they
Yeah.
have a voice and they have things to say.
Wow.
So that is true. It is too late to register to vote if you have not already
Yeah.
registered.
Yeah.
But you can go to City Hall and you can vote on paper if you wish
Yeah.
to do so. But for me, it's all about election day. I really enjoy the process of
Mhm.
going to vote early. I still remember standing in line in 2012 when Obama got elected.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
Was that the first time? Or was it 08? It was 12, right?
Yeah.
It was 08.
That's the
I
second.
still-
08 was the first
I
one.
still remember standing in line the first time in 08 and
Mm.
seeing at 7 in the morning in Mount Airy and seeing the line go around the block,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
It's really a moment. It's really
Yeah.
exciting.
Right.
If you're the kind of person who feeds off of going to a live sports performance or going to a live concert, you are missing the boat if you don't
Mhm.
go vote. You
That's right.
need
Yeah.
to go vote. It's really very exciting.
Take your children with you.
Take your
Yeah.
kids with
Yeah.
you. Take them in the booth. Show them
Mhm.
how
Yeah.
it's done. That's how we can actually save this country from, you know who.
No
Mhm.
doubt. Let me do this ID because you still ain't say how they can get in contact with you, but I got to do this name ID real quick. You're listening to We Talk Weeklies After the Talk on WPPMLP Philadelphia 106.5 FM. We Talk Weeklies After the Talk with your boy Charles Gregory and the beautiful.
Class-
and
Classy lady
And
Sparkle.
beautiful.
Lawrence Sizzle.
This is Larry Krasner, and you can find me at krasner4da.com. That's KRASNERFORDA.com, where you can volunteer, where you can donate, and where you can learn more about what we stand for.
Fantastic. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Look, this is our civic duty. It's very important for us to give the information to the people, right? When we talk about even, preventing false information, false narratives, right? It's better for you to hear them from the horse's mouth, so to speak, right? To hear the candidates who are doing some work to say some of the things that they're doing to truly know what's going on. You need platforms like this. That's why we always say support independent media, support We Talk Weekly, support people who are actually in those streets that's doing the work. So I don't want you to go anywhere. When we come back, we got more interviews to come. So let's put in our little, we got little journalists out there, Use Civic News. Let's go to Ella. Ella's been doing some great work in those communities. We'll be right back, y'all.
News, reporter Ella presents a new recipe that can help feed the community. Over to you, Ella.
Thanks, Willow. Now that fall is upon us, what's not a better way to start the fall season than an easy and simple recipe? Pumpkin bread is the most delicious and easiest food you can make for yourself, family and friends, and your community. Take a look. Today we're going to make pumpkin bread, so make sure you screenshot this recipe and let's get started. First, preheat your oven to 350 degrees. In one of your bowls, mix your flour, baking soda, baking powder, salt, and pumpkin pie spice. With your fork, mix. Now with your second bowl, mix your sugar, oil, and applesauce with a whisk. Once everything is mixed together, add your pumpkin and mix again. When everything is mixed evenly, combine both mixtures together. Make sure you scrape everything out so nothing is wasted. Now mix evenly until there's no lumps. After that, you want to set that aside and grab your bread pan. Lather some butter all around and add a little flour and spread it around until it looks like this. Now you want to pour the bread batter into the bread pan. Make sure you scrape everything out so nothing is wasted. Cut a line in the middle and it's ready for the oven. Make sure you are oven mitts and let the bread bake for 60 minutes. Once the 60 minutes is up, take it out of the oven and let it sit for a few minutes. When the bread pan is safe to touch, use a straight edge to separate the pan and bread. This step is optional, but if you would like, slice the bread into thick slices and it should look something like this. You are all done. Dig in and enjoy your pumpkin bread.
We just want to get a little background as to who the Fantastic Noise is and the noisemakers. If you can let us know.
Yes, absolutely. So once again, I am Fantastic Noise. I am the original noisemaker, so no one's going to make as much noise as me, okay? And right here we have the Noisemaker Band. This is only half of it. The other stuffs are upstairs. My Kevin Lamar, Lonnie, and Dobbs, who are the actual band members. These are the background singers. And we came to make some noise. We came to bring that noise today. That's what we trying to do. That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
And how did you guys get together?
Oh man, so it started with, I've been doing this on my own for almost 3 years now. And man, I guess each of these people here have different background stories. Most of us went to the same church together and we just kept going. This one, her, this is one of my assistants here, one of like my biggest supporter, my biggest shooter here. She's an assistant. So we just been building, and the same thing with upstairs with the band, just meeting through people, kept networking, kept seeing, and it was just like God ordained. Bam, here we are.
Awesome.
Yep.
Well, could you guys do We Talk Weekly a favor?
Yes.
Can you give us a drop in a melody type way?
Oh, a melody type way?
Yes.
Okay. So We Talk Weekly?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to do something like this. We Talk Weekly, come and hear us. We Talk Weekly, come and hear them. 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 Yeah!
We Talk Weeklies after the talk on WPPM up here, Philadelphia 106.5 FM. We Talk Weeklies after the talk with your boy Charles Gregory and beautiful,
Classy Lady Sparkle.
beautiful.
Lauren Sizzle.
There you go. And we got someone here with whom I have a tremendous amount of respect. She's no longer a guest. She's a friend to the show. She like one of our, I call her political co-host or something like that. She's family now, right? One of my favorite people. I can gush about her all day long. But yeah, let's jump right into it. You want to jump right into it?
Yes.
All right.
Tanisha.
She's not a guest. Make sure you don't say you're our guest. All right.
Our friend and family to the show,
There you go.
Tanisha
Beju.
Beju, program manager at the Committee of 70, leads voter engagement and public education initiatives across Pennsylvania. A Tech for America alumni with 13 years of teaching experience, she also served as judge of elections since 2020. The Committee of 70 promotes ethical government and voter confidence, ensuring free, fair, and secure elections for all. Y'all already know what to do for our family member, Tanisha Beju. Give a warm We Talk Weekly welcome.
Yeah, take a round of applause right there. How are you? How are you?
Feeling good.
Let's move your mic up just a little bit. Yeah. Let's get
How's that?
help her out there for a little bit. Let's
I'm
help
good
her.
with lots of things, but this one not so much.
It's all good. You know, one of the things that we just happen to have DA Larry Krasner on.
I saw.
Yeah, and it was interesting. He talked a little bit about, some of the, things who he has been working on, some of the, conversations he has been having with some of the, interviews he has been doing and just some of the pushback. But it was interesting to see his positions on even accepting the naysayers, right? And how open he was to community and community change and working with the community. And I thought that was really interesting. That said, right, what has the Committee of 70 been doing as it relates to kind of following the candidates and really, giving platform for the community to know who the candidates are and, who potentially you can't tell them who to vote for, but at least giving them the information.
Yeah.
What was the Committee of 70? What have you guys been doing?
Oh man, how much time do I have again?
You-
I have
you
the whole
come-
evening,
yes,
right?
you do. Yes, you do.
So I love that question. This is definitely hits the educator in me, scratches that itch. I taught for 13 years here in the city, and now having the opportunity to work with adults and to make sure that adults know what's on the ballot. So that's one of the presentations that Committee of 70 offers. I've done those virtually, in person, and we have information about the offices more so than the candidates. We have an interactive voter tool for people to learn about the candidates, and that's at ballot.70.org. You type in your address. Since this is a primary, you next after your address, so it can pull up exactly what you're going to see, whether you're here in Philly or the collar counties. Then you have to hit Democrat or Republican, since you will only see here in PA we have closed primaries. And so if you type in Democrat, then you'll see the two candidates for DA, and you get to learn more about them, and then you can compare their specific positions and be able to vote your values. But with the what's on your ballot presentation, it's not just the DA's race, although that one does have the biggest headlines. There's also city controller, which is so
very
important. When we talk about our budget, we are.
I was going to ask you. Let's sit on that for a little bit. I want to expand on, because a lot of people don't talk about city controller.
I've been talking about the budget and can't wait to do that. But because that's a whole lot to talk about. So we do city controller. There are the 3 ballot questions, and the 3 ballot questions are so important, and they hit topically things that are really close to all of our hearts. So those are ballot questions about unhoused people, about affordable housing, and then about an oversight and office of panel, an oversight panel, and then an office to oversee prisons. So making sure that people who are just impacted are treated with respect. So we have those. And then finally, we have judges. And so there are a number of judges, not only statewide, but also here in the counties that are super important for us to know about and to vote on. So there's so much. And sadly, this is traditionally a low voter turnout time period, even though these are offices that truly impact us. Like when we think about judges, we have the municipal court, which is down at City Hall. And of course, that's like the lower level court that has like small claims, which is really important if you're in a tenant landlord situation and you have issues of like, are you going to be evicted? Like, so it might seem small to other people, but it's huge for you. There's traffic court, like the smaller pieces, but then there's the court of common pleas. That's the court that we go have jury duty for. And I always remember that court because that's the court you're going to hear the word pleas in the most. That's family court. So we're thinking custody, domestic disputes, like there's all types of issues there. And with Philly courts, most often cases end there. They don't often go to appeals. So while many people don't love that we vote for judges, usually in other states, they're more merit-based. But here where we vote for them, we have to make sure we vote our values because these are people who can make life-altering decisions of who gets custody, if people stay in their homes. It's here in the city, so it's not like it's somewhere far away. And then finally, like I said, this is sometimes the end of the road for these cases. They're one and done here. So making sure that we know who's on that ballot, again, doing the ballot.70.org, our interactive voter guide, to learn who these people are so that you can have an informed vote.
Oh, go ahead, Sizzle. Go.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, with all of the
I don't hear you. 1 second. Let me make sure your mic is on. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just
go.
going to say, with all of the work that Committee of 70 has been doing with preparing the information so that voters are informed, when it comes to the judges, are there, without saying any names or anything, are there any specific concerns that you may have? Like, for example, if voters don't go out and vote, and there are potentially some judges who may get in that may not have done things that are beneficial to Black and Brown communities. Are there any specific things that you're concerned about, like potentially getting in, like if people don't go out and vote?
So I think what is most heartwarming for me is that many people use the Philadelphia Bar Association's recommendations. So one of the ways, since there's not a ton of money that goes into some of these judges' races, voters really rely on a lot of wards. So when you see your committee people, like they hand you the papers of who to vote for, a lot of them depend on the Philly Bar Association. They have a judicial commission where they have hundreds of people who are going through and doing these really rigorous evaluations of the candidates. And so it's like the most intense job interview ever because the judicial candidates not only have to have a certain amount of recommenders that they put forward, they also know that other ones are going to be found from them. And they're looking at every single part of your life. And so people that don't participate are automatically listed as not recommended. There's only 3 ratings. There's not recommended, recommended, highly recommended. And it's not just when you hear Philly Bar Association, of course, you're thinking lawyers, but it's not only lawyers who are part of the Judicial Commission. They have a whole realm of people to be able to fully vet these candidates. And for disclosure, our president and CEO, Lauren Christelle, is part of the Judicial Commission, which is how we know so much about what goes into that rigorous study. And so I feel really good knowing that there are some candidates, to go back to your actual question, there are some candidates who are listed as not recommended, but that is put forth and many people are looking at the not recommended, and why.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
there are, of course, recommended and highly recommended candidates.
That's
Interesting.
why I love our show
Mm.
because I've
Interesting.
never known that.
Yeah.
I love my
I
job.
just-
I learn
I
new
just-
things all the time, and I'm like,
Yes.
how do I live? How am I in my
Yeah.
40s? And
Right.
it's like, how
Yeah.
did I not know this?
I've never known that. My question to you is that when you go into the voting poll or booth,
Mhm.
it can sometimes be very intimidating.
Mhm.
And DA Krasner was just here saying how after the first time it gets easier. Take your
Mhm.
children, which I've done that.
Mhm.
But you got to understand when you're going into that booth, especially now for the elder, because at one time
Mhm.
it didn't look the way it does. How can we make a voter, especially first time voters or elderly voters, feel more confident in choosing or
Mhm.
picking or even understanding how the voting is? What's your
Yeah,
opinion on that?
I am a judge of election. We don't have a very visible role. We're a poll worker who oversees the division.
Mhm.
And so what people are usually used to, they come in, and now in Philly we have the e-poll books, which are a godsend. They are wonderful. I mean, I know people are used to like the really big book and like you flip through and try and find it alphabetically,
Mhm.
but these e-poll books just make it easier for both the voter and the poll worker.
So for those who don't know what that is, can you
Mhm.
just explain to you?
Oh, absolutely. So here in Philly, we have so when you find your polling place, which you can do on 70's website, you just type in find my polling place. And so when you go in, you're going to find your ward and division, and you'll see a bunch of friendly faces. They should be friendly. That is my dream, is that one day election day will be a holiday and we'll all have off and we'll all be able to vote and we'll take our kids. This is my dream world. But you'll see that there should be about 5 people. There's someone who's off to the side in case you have an issue. So say you come in and you thought you were going to vote by mail and you got your mail-in ballot, but you decide you want to vote in person. So there's a person called a judge of elections. They can help take your mail-in ballot and then get you set up to vote on the machine. Most people, if they come in, they already knew they wanted to vote in person. They'll go up to 2 people who have what looks like an iPad. And that iPad is such a godsend because it is basically on a stoplight system, red, yellow, green. So if you have voted at your polling place many times, you come in, you say your name, you're like, hi, how you doing? Blah, blah, Tanisha Beju. They type in your name, you're green, you're good to go. You voted there before. You don't have to take out ID or anything.
Oh,
you're good, right?
Mhm.
And so then there's yellow, which means maybe you're a first time voter. Maybe you're a first time voter there, like you've moved from somewhere else. And so it'll say, oh, this is your first time voting. Welcome. You'll show an ID. And there are so many different types of IDs that you can show, both photo and non-photo. And if anyone has kept their voter ID card, many people don't. I keep everything. I keep absolutely everything. So they can use that. Students can use their campus ID. People can use their different utility bills. There's all kinds of ways that you can prove your ID, who you are. And so that's the yellow. That's kind of the, let's just prove who you are. You're good to go. And then red, if someone is flagged red on the book, it'll show you, and hopefully your poll worker will flip it over so that you can see too. Then it'll say, oh, this might not be where you're supposed to vote. Sometimes in a location, they'll have a few different voting locations. And so they might say, oh, you're not with us, like you're across the way, or, oh, you got a mail-in ballot, so we need you to surrender that, and then you can vote on the machine. But that e-poll book, it's really helpful. That way there's no confusion. Everyone is doing the exact same thing. It doesn't leave anything up to interpretation. That way it's a super streamlined system and everyone can see it.
This is amazing. Shout out to the Committee of 70. I actually just went on the site, and one of the things that I always talk about as it relates to knowing or having challenges, people having challenges in voting, isn't necessarily the candidates, is more these questions.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'd love to get into the question.
Yeah, let's get into these questions over here. Come on, Cletus, come on.
All right. So One of the things that people always ask, and then I do want to, before I leave, get back to all the help that people can get in the voting
Absolutely. This your
booth.
world. This your world. Yep.
So I'm not going to forget that, because people can get assistance in all kinds of ways. But with the ballot questions, people are always asking, why are they written like that? Why are they so complicated? Because once I, break this down and we're all chit-chatting, it's going to be like, this is a great question. Why didn't they just write it like this?
Yeah.
So the beginning of all the questions always starts, shall the Philadelphia Home Rule Charter be amended?
That's right.
So the Philadelphia Home Rule Charter is our constitution. It's our city. It's what sets up our city government. And when they say shall it be amended, they're saying, should we change the way we set up our government? So the beginning part, you never have to read that again. It's always just saying, should we change our city constitution? But it's complicated, the language, because they don't want to do a bait and switch. So they're going to take that language and put it in the Philly Home Rule Charter. So if they put it in everyday regular language, then they'd have to change it to put it into government wording. And you change, like, every word has a different meaning. And so they want us to vote on exactly what is going to be put in the Home Rule Charter. So that's why it's funky. Let's get into what it means, though. So the first question, which is about having a new office for the Office of Homeless Service Ombudsperson.
Right.
So that question, which is going to ask about that office, is more of a clear one, because then it goes on to say to provide oversight, to do blah, 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 blah.
Right.
What that question is asking has only a little bit of a need for backstory. So during the pandemic, there was between 2020 and 2023, there was about 15 million that was allegedly mismanaged by the Office of Homeless Service. And there were some nonprofits that weren't being paid on time in a timely fashion for the services that they were providing, because the city contracts with nonprofits to provide those. And so what Council Member Gilmore Richardson wants with this ballot measure, so of course ballot measures, they get approved by City Council, but we have the final, as voters, have the final say of yes or no. So when she put this forward with City Council, her reasoning was that if we have an additional office, it's an independent watchdog where people, if they are either a service provider or a service user, someone who is experiencing homelessness or someone who is helping, they can report to someone else, like what is happening with the Office of Homeless Service. And they can kind of investigate and kind of also to help the office itself, the Office of Homeless Service, if they're like, we would love to do these things, we just, our hands are bound by these rules. So it's someone who's going to track and follow through to make sure that we're providing people the service they need.
Fantastic.
So that's the first question.
Let me see if I can get this up
And then
here.
you mentioned about the assistance
For
voters that come in.
for voters, yes.
Yeah.
But there are two more ballot questions. Do we want to do the other ballot questions
Yeah,
first?
I'm trying to pull, give
Absolutely.
me 1 second. I'm trying to pull this up as you're speaking so people can actually see what you're referring to. And this is, ladies and gentlemen, this is directly from the Committee of 70 site. I mean, this is a resource for you guys. Yeah, there we go. And so we want to go to question 2 is what you're saying?
Yeah, we also have question 2. So
Yeah.
question 2 needs a whole lot more backstory.
Right.
That,
So let me just read this real quick.
yeah,
It said,
go ahead.
should the homeroom charter be amended to increase the minimum amount that must be appropriated for spending on housing trust fund purposes in the city's operating budget each year?
it does not roll off the tongue for most people the way you just made that look real easy. And people are like, oh, okay, I get it.
Would you like to, would you like to explain that? I mean, yeah, sure.
Yes, absolutely. So the very first part is the Philadelphia the Housing Trust Fund. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Housing
not.
Trust Fund, because I wasn't familiar
I'm
with
not
it
at all.
before. I'm telling you, I learned so many things at Committee of 70. We have so many partnerships and friends, and we're always all over the city. And it's like, oh, I need to brush up on this, know what the heck I'm talking about.
Right.
So it is such a phenomenal program that people should know about, because it is providing not only new construction of affordable houses, but also it provides funding for repairs to help people stay in their homes. So it provides money for
Yeah.
all kinds of basic repairs for homes so that people, especially older folks, can age in place. And then it also provides for people experiencing homelessness. They do a really great report. I think their impact report comes out every 2 or 3 years, and they like go into detail of everything they're doing with their money. Okay, so that's the Housing Trust Fund. It does great things.
love the, I will vote yes. It's no
Wait,
question.
but I haven't
Okay.
even told you what. So that's just making sure we knew what the thing was.
Oh,
that we're
okay,
trying to
all
give some
right.
money to.
All right, I ain't even get the over. I'm just
Okay.
like, yeah, I'm voting yes on that.
Yeah. So what happens with developers? I live in South Philly, and so I drive down Washington Ave, and there's always all these new buildings popping up all the time with rent that I'm like, is that rent? Like for Washington Ave? No shade, no shade. But it's like, how is there all of this new construction? And my mom lives in West Philly, in University City, same thing. So developers, they are able to make all of this really expensive market rate housing and make it really dense, have tons of apartments without doing affordable housing because they pay a portion, they pay a fee so that they don't have to make affordable housing. They pay that fee to the city. They're like, you do it, that's on you. I'm trying to make this, new big market rate place. We'll pay a fee to the city, and the city does affordable housing. And then the city takes that money. Some goes into our general fund and some goes to the Housing Trust Fund. Now, council member Jamie Gautier was like, if developers are paying a fee for affordable housing, all of it should go straight into the trust fund without the city being a middleman. And so that's what this question is asking is instead of having the city have any say in the apportion in that minimum amount that goes to the Housing Trust Fund, just have it all go there directly.
Round of applause for Jamie Gautier. She's doing some great stuff over there. I was a little hard on her, but she's putting some stuff. Okay, all right, cool. All right.
And then we have our last question.
There we go. Let me read it for you guys. Shall the Philadelphia Home Rule Charter be amended to provide for the creation of an independent Philadelphia Prison Community Oversight Board and Office of Prison Oversight or further authorize City Council to determine the composition, powers, and duties of the board? And yes, they need some oversight. No question, but go ahead.
Committee of 70 also says yes on this one. And we don't
Interesting,
take positions. We don't often take positions. We last time we took a position, I believe, was for the Department of Oversight for PPD. We definitely believe in oversight where it's needed. And this one, I don't have to do tons of backstory and why we need this. I do want to lift up, of course, that we have 800 unfilled positions in our prisons. And so that not only impacts our people who are incarcerated, that also impacts the people providing services. So everyone is impacted. And then think of families and friends who want to see their loved ones. There's also a lot of work that Committee of 70 wants to do to make sure that people who are incarcerated are able to vote, because the only time that you are not able to vote is if you're currently incarcerated on a felony. But if you are in pretrial detention, you can vote. If you're incarcerated on a misdemeanor, you can vote. So to make sure that our prisons are humane and safe, what this ballot question is asking is if we replace the current board and oversight with 9 people. So 4 would be chosen by the mayor, 4 would be chosen by council president, 1 would be chosen by city controller, but all 9 would need to be residents of Philadelphia, could not work in police, sheriff, or blanking on the last place that they can't work, all law enforcement places. And then at minimum, 1 person needs to be a formerly incarcerated person in order to give out, right?
I love that.
Right? I know.
So you said controller,
Mayor.
and president city council. So council president Kenyatta Johnson.
Correct.
So I'm making my plea right now. So Mayor Sherelle Parker, council president Kenyatta Johnson. Oh, who's the controller? I don't know. Oh, that's
So
a
right
shame.
now,
I
our
don't know the
city
controller.
controller is Christy Brady, and she is
Okay.
on the ballot.
All right, Christy. Oh, that's why.
Mhm,
Interesting.
mhm.
Okay. Well, I want to be on this board. It's no question. Like, yo, I think that, and I would love to work with you guys
Mhm.
on this, because I love my returning citizens, and I love my citizens that's incarcerated. A lot of
Mhm.
them are incarcerated unfairly, unjustly, and all of that, right? But I feel that they need more advocacy
Mhm.
and people to represent them, to make sure that their voices are amplified. So all my people out there that's in them cages, we love you, we got you, no doubt. Yeah, but
No, I was just going to say we absolutely agree. We had an event earlier this week at Eastern State
okay.
where there was a panel with Councilmember Thomas.
Okay.
A member of the PA Prison Society
Yeah.
was speaking, just in answering people's questions and explaining why we're in favor of this ballot question. So absolutely.
Fantastic. So, ladies and gentlemen, for those who I didn't read the question for number one. I'm gonna read that for those who are listening, because we're live on the radio also. So we read question 2 of what would these be considered? The home rule charter questions for
The ballot
the
questions.
ballot questions.
Mhm.
Okay. So we read question 2 and we read question 3. I'm gonna read question 1, and I'll have our esteemed, she's not our guest anymore, she's part of the family, just talk about it a little bit more for those who are on the radio. So this is question 1. Should the Philadelphia Home Rule Charter be amended to create the Office of Homeless Services? I can't pronounce it.
Ombudsperson.
Bud person. Thank you for that. To assist residents experiencing homelessness, help provide fair access to essential resources, improve quality of life in the shelter system, which is very important, investigate client complaints, need that, and provide oversight and recommendations to the city's providers of homeless services. So you want to talk about that real quick?
Yeah, that was the one that we talked
Yeah.
about at the top, where we said that because the pandemic saw between 2020 and 2023, we saw
Yeah.
15 million mismanaged, that we want to have an ombudsperson, which rolls off my tongue only because I've kind of stumbled on it in maybe like
Ombudsperson.
4 or 5. I'm used to ombudsman, like,
Yeah.
and so
Ah,
it's the
gotcha.
person that and we love inclusive language, of
Yeah,
course.
there you go, yeah.
But that one I just need to work on. So the ombudsperson is really the independent watchdog who is going to be the person tracking and receiving these complaints, and
Yeah.
also not just complaints from people who are receiving services, but
Yeah.
maybe being able to be responsive to OHS's needs itself.
Fantastic. How does one become an ombudsman person? How does that
I
happen?
do not know that one.
That's weird. I don't
That
know.
one I am not sure of, but
Mhm.
we do have an amazing VP who of external affairs that I just did a member election briefing with yesterday,
Okay,
and he
yeah.
was able to answer so many questions. So
Wow, okay.
I'm just gonna throw this out to him. I will make sure to get back to you.
Round of applause for that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely.
Yes,
I'll
we'll
throw
have
that
it in
to
our
someone else.
comment section.
Good.
Yeah. I have a question.
Yes.
Now, May 7th has passed, but that's like this big thing about the real ID.
Mhm.
So with the real ID, I know that they want you to have it if you don't have a passport, if you're flying domestically, if you're going into federal buildings, things like that. Will this impact voting? Will they require a real ID for voters?
So that is an excellent question. And there are lots of questions in Harrisburg about voting and ID right now. When it comes to the primary on May 20th, real IDs are not needed. There are about 20 different IDs that people can bring to prove who they are. And that's both photo and non-photo. If people have signed up for, like I said, if they've retained their little voter ID square when for your voter registration, college IDs you can use. There's also a form for you to sign. If you don't have either of those, there is a possibility for someone to vouch for you, to say like, okay, like I know this is Tanisha. I will sign this paper verifying.
Oh,
There are many different ways.
nice.
And it says it again on that e-poll book. So this isn't just knowledge that is within the poll workers and people can't see it. There should be a form too that is on the voter table that list out all of the acceptable IDs, because we really do want it to be an inclusive place. There's been such a push. In Philly alone, we need 8,500 poll workers. And so we, in the work that we do at Committee of 70, we work really closely with the city commissioners, and they really want to bring in lots of young people. Like for a while, me in my 40s, I was considered young as a poll worker, and we want it to be even younger, because you can be 17 and be a poll worker. You can't vote yet, but you can be part of the process. So just like you want to build the healthy habits by bringing your kids to the polls and having them, parents are always like, can they go in? Yes, absolutely. Have them go in, have them see that. So a 17-year-old can be a poll worker. You get paid your $200. There's $50 for the training that you get paid. You get that $250 within 2 weeks. So that's great for a young person to be able to see what happens when you go and vote. So there's lots of different IDs you can use. Hopefully people are going to answer your questions. If you walk in and you forget this conversation about the ballot questions, you should turn and talk to poll workers. We are going to be so bored. This is a low turnout election. Talk to us, please. Talk to us. We are allowed to ask, you're allowed to ask us questions. Also, if to answer your earlier question about if you have older people who are going, you're actually allowed to have assistance in the voting booth. So you can sign another form and get assistance. So in my division, we have people who can't stand for long periods, people with arthritic hands. There's a young lady who goes in with her mom because she has an intellectual disability. And so whenever I'm doing a presentation, whether it's what's on your ballot or teaching people how to work the polls, I always say, if you see two people in the booth and you're wondering what's going on, like what's going on there, it's like, first, mind your business.
I was about to say, mind your business.
Mind your business, because it's absolutely fine. And we need to normalize making sure that people get the support they need.
That's right.
The other piece is if someone starts to feel frazzled because maybe you haven't used ballot.70.org to preview all your choices, because there's judges on this ballot, and you'll see at the top of the ballot, district attorney, city controller, you'll see the 3 ballot questions. On the other side, you'll see all those judges. It might feel overwhelming. You might press the wrong button. That's fine. We can spoil your ballot. You just find your way out of the curtain. You whisper over to someone like, I need to do this again. We will be so happy. We will be bored. Give us something to do. Talk to us. You are allowed to, as long as you don't hit vote and don't like keep going through, because that's happened before where people are like, I think I messed up on it, like, but you know, it is what it is. And it's like, no, it is not. What are you talking about? So for you, before you hit vote, you're able to just reach out to us and go, can I cancel this? And there is a way to cancel before you hit it all through and your vote goes away. There is no kind of like Kmart blue light special thing that sounds, you know, there is, no one's going to shame you. You're actually allowed to do that up to 3 times. After that, we don't trust you. Then it's like, nope. We get the little cane, we pull you out. But yeah, you're allowed. Exactly. But you are allowed, showing age here. I don't think no one knows what the blue light special is or anything like that. Sorry about that. But it's a place where it's fine to make mistakes. It's fine to ask for help, whether you need physical help, you need to just ask questions. You're also allowed to wear your partisan stuff. So as long as you aren't in the space sharing your ideas, pressuring people, you can wear whatever you want. Go in, you can have your phone with you. It should be a place where you feel good. And I know with my team, I'm always like, happy election day. I hope whoever you voted for wins. I don't mean that for everyone, because I know exactly what party they're a part of, but I still want them to feel good. And I want everyone to feel like your vote matters, your vote counts.
Fantastic. I mean, every time you come, I get super excited because you make understanding voting fun. And I think,
thank you, love.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's important for us to continue to amplify people like you, because literally most people get overwhelmed when we start to hear about it's time to vote, and we like, oh my God, either I hate all the candidates or I don't know who to vote for.
Mhm.
And I think it needs to be some constant information that's going out continuously. The problem for me, and I will always stand on this, is especially when it comes to, say, for example, the primary, you don't hear about. I think that this is probably the most important
Absolutely.
election. These are the judges that can keep you away from your kids,
Mhm.
judges that don't lock you up,
Mhm.
judges that potentially will be appointed to the Supreme Court, which we have a problem with right now. And so when we talk about just information, I just want to thank you for that. You know, this is a very important election. So when I hear people saying, "Oh, this is the most important election of your life," I get so tired of hearing that,
Mhm.
because the only election that they care about or seem to care about is the presidential election.
And these are things that are in our neighborhood. Is helping
That part.
affordable housing here, is helping our incarcerated loved ones. It's, the judges, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
it's so important. And it does beyond just Philly and beyond PA.
Yeah.
Like when we think about in 2020 with all the challenges to that election, so much of it went to our PA Supreme Court. So we have all different layers of court,
That's
like
right.
whether we want to think about it being
That's
very
right.
close and personal or
Yeah.
it mattering to the whole country. Like it is so important to have these conversations, and I love being on.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that is really helpful is once we break it down, then we can disagree
That's right.
on how to do these things in the best way. Like
Yeah.
these are conversations that people should be having on their stoop, on their porch, wherever. If they're like, do we need yet another office? Like, why don't we put this money into, instead of having the office of ombudsperson, why don't we put more money into the office of homeless service? Or how are they going to pick these people for the prison oversight? Like, that's the type of conversation we should be having. And we can disagree. Reasonable people can disagree on these things, but we need to be able to have these conversations. And sadly, it's not a quick, easy, like, let me tell you in
Yeah.
one sentence. Like, we do have to kind of make space for it,
Mhm.
but it shouldn't be overwhelming, and it shouldn't make people ever feel dumb,
Yeah.
and that's what I always want to make sure that when we're on, that we're having conversations and people are like, oh yeah, that's interesting. That's
Yeah.
relevant. I do care about that.
Yeah.
And then they can hopefully go and talk to their people about it.
Yeah.
As one of the unsung heroes here in Philadelphia doing this work,
Mhm.
you've
Give
been
a round of
educated.
She called me a
applause, ladies.
hero.
Let's give a round of applause, ladies and
Yeah,
gentlemen.
absolutely. You've been educated through Rutgers as
Yeah.
well as University of Penn.
Mhm.
How has that molded to what you're doing now?
Ivy Leaguer, huh?
Oh, I think that the best education that I've had was in the classroom, was with young people. So I had been at Temple for a bit because I thought I wanted to do.
Across from Temple
Mhm,
University,
mhm.
ladies and gentlemen.
To you.
Thought I wanted to do a PhD and teach adults. And then I eventually got back to teaching adults, but left from Temple to do Teach for America to teach young people. And it's really, I had so much like bias and my own kind of hangups before going into the classroom, like preconceived notions of like, what do little people even know and what do they care about? And, oh my God, how am I going to dumb this down? And little people care. They have eyes and ears as young. I mean, everybody knows that kids will mimic things back and they have opinions on everyone and everything. Even people in the White House, they have serious opinions. And so we should be respectful of meeting people where they are with information that's accessible and relevant. And so through 13 years of students telling me this is great, this is not, it really helped to shape how I deliver things for adults, making sure that it's fun, it's relevant. It's, that I also share my own authentic joy. I was just interviewed by some students at Parkway who are working on a civic engagement campaign.
Shout out to the Parkway Civic
Yes.
Campaign.
Right? Like, look at the Parkway students. And so they were like, what's the best way for you to communicate information? Should you do it like very niche and specific, very broad? I'm like, I just am true to myself. And I lean into my nerdiness and how excited I am to be like, I learned this thing. And one day Charles is going to let me just come on here and talk all about the city budget.
That's right,
Because I know every single thing I want to nerd out.
There you go. Come on, Cleta. Come on. Come on.
Right?
We want you.
And so I think learning, and kids respond to that. It might not be their thing, but you just truly owning your own kind of, this is how I am and this is what I love. And so that was the true education. And teaching for 13 years, that's basically what, like K through 12. So that was the best education I got, was from little people.
Awesome.
The little people. I love the little people. Man.
Yeah. Not in my home though, because I don't have it. 12 nieces and nephews.
Wow.
And
No,
so
you got enough, man.
auntie
There you go.
vibes. Yeah.
No doubt. No doubt. All right. Well, this time flew so quick, man. But you got about 15 minutes?
Yeah.
All right, so you're gonna stay on. You're gonna stay
Okay.
on with us because the interview is over, but we got about 15 more minutes and we're gonna get some more stories. So I want you to hang out with us if that's
Love it.
okay.
Absolutely.
All right, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. So I don't want you guys to go anywhere. I'm your boy Charles Gregg with the beautiful
Classy Lady Sparkle.
and the beautiful
Lauren Sizzle.
and the beautiful.
Tanisha Beige.
And we'll be right back after this because we do have some good news. or bad
Yeah,
news.
we got a story.
Okay.
Entertainment news.
All right, we got
The
the sizzle,
sizzle.
right? We got the,
We have a story.
all right, there we go. We got a story, right? And so let's go to one. And since we're talking about our young people, let's go to Willow from our Youth Civic News, and who's been doing some dynamic reporting. And we'll be right back after this. Holla at me, Willow.
Hi, I'm Willow Jordan with Youth Civic News, and I'm here with my grandfather.
Willie Jordan.
And G-Pop, what brings you out tonight?
Well, I'm here to discuss the importance of the election that's coming up, and important of responsibility that we have to do is get out to vote.
What is your role?
I wear many hats, but one is a community activist, and that means to keep people aware and make them informed on the issues of the day so they can come out and make a real good choice on voting for the right candidates.
What are some of the issues you see?
Housing, education, transportation. There's a lot of things. Anything that we do in our lives has to do with elections, politicians, elected officials making those decisions. The amount of time that you stay in school and the amount of days you stay in school is based on what some elected official came up with.
How important is it to vote?
It is very important. It's not just important, it's responsible. Voting is not a selfish activity. It's a selfless. You vote to help others. So as you help others, people help you, and it'll be a better world, a better city, a better country to live in.
Where do some of your beliefs come from?
Well, my belief is based on, I guess, I would first come from my home training. My parents told me the importance of civic responsibility, caring, loving, sharing, being involved, being responsible on your actions.
Is there any positive knowledge you would give to the people who don't vote?
I would tell them if they can't come up with a reason why they should vote for themselves, come up with a reason why they should vote for someone else, for their parents, for their children, for more street lights, how they want a better community. Do it for someone else.
I'm Willow Jordan reporting from Youth Civic News, and I'm here with my grandfather, Willie Jordan.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Shout out to Willow. That young lady has a bright future. Very proud of her doing her work, civically engaged in her community. So I'm super excited about that. I'm your boy Charles Gregg with the beautiful,
Classy Lady
the
Sparkle.
beautiful,
Lauren
and the
Sizzle.
beautiful.
Tanisha Beige.
And we are here. We talk weeklies after the talk on WPPMLP Philadelphia 106.5 FM. We talk weeklies after the talk. So do we have good news and bad news?
We have some bad news. I'm gonna keep
All right.
it.
Oh,
There you
no.
go.
Yeah,
All right, all
we
right, there
got
we go.
bad news.
Give it
right,
to me. Come on.
I'll be waiting for. All right,
All right,
look.
here we go. Let me give you some music. All
Okay,
right,
yeah, something. All right, well, this is probably a very tragic and controversial story that a lot of people have been hearing about. It's about a man named Rodney Hinton Jr. from Cincinnati, Ohio. He's accused of intentionally striking and killing Hamilton County Sheriff's Deputy Larry Henderson. He's basically in jail right now without bond. He's waiting trial for aggravated murder. The incident occurred on May 2nd. It was following the fatal police shooting of Hinton Jr. 18-year-old son, Ryan. Authorities say Hinton Jr., the father, drove directly at Deputy Henderson, killing him shortly after watching body camera footage of his son's death. So pretty much the police killed the son allegedly, and it was also found on the body camera that he had no weapons and was shot in the back. So now the father, Hinton Jr., is in court. His attorney argued that he should be viewed as a person suffering from mental illness and not a cop killer. However, prosecutors presented testimony suggesting that Hinton Jr.'s actions were intentional and citing witnesses and statements and video evidence. There was a disturbance during the hearing, which led to Hinton Jr. being rushed out of court, adding to the tense atmosphere. Do you have any footage on that?
I don't. I have his picture up though, and we only
Okay.
got about 10 more minutes.
Okay,
So
well,
yeah, for
there's
sure.
if you all want to like Google it, it's on like YouTube and TikTok. Pretty much when he was in the courtroom, there were all the sheriffs. I want to
Yeah.
say, let's just say about 15 of them, and they were giving these stares. It was like intimidating stares. And once after Hinton, I guess, was facing the judge and then being walked out of the courtroom, he gave a stare back with his head held high, as if he was not intimidated, and showed these officers that he wasn't intimidated. It's also said that the man who killed his son is not the man that he murdered in the car. There's also another incident where there's one cop of color, a woman, who did not look at him as if in solidarity. And this is just my view, that she wasn't going to give him the death of stare like her colleagues did. Judge Tyrone Yates denied bail for Hinton, citing the defendant's mental state and the risk posted to the public. Hinton's next court date is set for May 12th.
All around, that was a sad. It's just sad. That whole situation is sad,
Yeah.
and it's hard to. I hate to say even take sides, because as a father, and I believe that's his only child, his
Yeah.
only son. I mean, literally, I know he went crazy after that. Right?
But after he saw the body camera of
Yeah.
his son being killed and
Yeah, I know
not
that-
being
that
armed
hurt.
and being killed in the back, he just lost it. And minutes after that is when he went
Yeah.
to kill the officer.
Yeah,
with his
but it's
vehicle.
unfortunate for the officer and his family, because he had nothing to do with that, right? So
Correct.
there is two sides to this. That
Mhm.
it's just sad. It's just sad.
And there's a long history too of people who don't trust the court system.
That's right.
And so, in addition to any kind of psychological
Yeah.
break, there's also a historical
Mhm.
That
like
part.
legacy of like, can we trust it? Which, of course, I'm gonna bring it back to voting.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
we need to make sure that we trust the judges who are there. But
Yeah.
another thing that 70 is working on is a jury service campaign,
Mhm.
because we see all the time that everyone, but especially people of color, need to serve on juries, and we're working to
That part.
get the word out, et cetera, and maybe do things around like increasing jury pay. But when we think about the court system, we want to make sure that we are judged by a jury of our peers.
Mhm.
And so as people of color, it is so important for us
Mhm.
not to try and get out of those as much as we're like, oh, I got
Yeah.
other things. But when we think of situations like these, that's the first thing I was thinking of, is that I
Mhm.
hope that he has a jury that looks like
Yeah.
him.
And you made a good point, because the reason that he did what he did is he didn't trust the justice system. He's like,
Mhm.
oh no, they're going to get off,
Mhm.
or whatever he thought.
Mhm.
But you're right. It's like he didn't have trust in it. So,
Exactly. And that might be unfounded but we know in that particular instance, but we know overwhelmingly we have seen so many examples and in distress,
Yeah.
at least for us, if we're going to take a lesson from that, it's that we need to make sure that people don't do the same here, that they feel like they can trust our courts and our juries.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That wasn't no good news.
That was your bad news from your girl, Classy Lady Sparkle.
No doubt, no doubt. So as the time ticks, we're gonna go right into the sizzle. You ready for me?
I am ready, but before I go right into that, I have my little spiel.
There you go.
With public media losing federal funding, the
Ah.
trickle down effect hits independent media even harder. It's extremely important to support independent media, so you can do so in 3 ways. You can subscribe, number 1, to We Talk Weekly on all social media and major podcast platforms. Number 2, you can like, share, and comment on our content. And finally, support us, number 3, by making a donation on Cash App to $ We Talk
Come on,
Weekly,
holla,
or you
man.
can go to wetalkweekly.com and click the donate tab and make a donation on our PayPal.
There you go.
And coming soon, you can make a tax deductible donation to our nonprofit Project STEAM.
That ain't
So
round
we'll
of applause
keep you
for that.
posted about that. All right, so our guy Ryan Coogler, his film Sinners is still tearing up the box office
So
after
good.
crossing the $200 million
yeah,
threshold
$200
million. Oh, wow.
domestically. I know I'm like shortening his coins.
Give him his bread.
That's a lot
So
of money.
yeah, so the synopsis: 2 brothers return to their hometown in the Jim Crow era South, seeking a fresh start, only to find that an even greater evil, including the Ku Klux Klan, has taken root. Michael B. Jordan stars as twins in this vampire thriller directed by Ryan Coogler, blending supernatural horror with historical tension. So Coogler has been behind several successful films such as Black Panther and Creed. So have you seen it yet?
I haven't. I keep hearing
have.
about it. I haven't
You
seen
need to.
I
It is
know.
so
It
good.
is.
Yeah, I keep hearing
It's
that.
definitely interesting. It's a
Mhm.
lot of different hidden gems in there.
There
Yeah.
are, and the music is incredible. Like, just loved
Gotta
it.
see it.
I
Gotta see
can't
it.
wait.
I might
I
go
can't
tomorrow.
wait.
I've been
Treat
busy.
yourself.
I've been out of
Yeah.
town. I haven't seen it. I'm back though.
Yeah.
Your boy back.
Yeah. All right. So finally, this year's Met Gala was a whole movie with
Mhm.
many celebrities showing up in some of the most finest threads, y'all.
That's right.
So this year's theme, Superfine, tailoring Black style. That was the theme. It made a powerful statement. So Coleman Domingo, Lewis Hamilton, A$AP Rocky, Pharrell Williams, and Anna Wintour, they co-chaired the Met Gala this year, and LeBron James served as honorary chair. So some of the highlights of the event included athletes such as Sha'Carri Richardson, you had Simone Biles, and Breonna Stewart, who had some pretty interesting looks. Rihanna revealed that she is pregnant. She is pregnant with her and A$AP Rocky's 3rd child. And I'm pretty sure her fans were very disappointed because they,
We're not getting that.
You're not getting that music. So no time soon. So
They
you can
trying for
forget
that
about it.
They trying for that girl though. They gotta be.
I hope so.
They like
I hope this.
she-
I kind of feel like if this is not the girl, they're going to try again.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's just me. Like I feel like they might try again though. Diana Ross, she looks super amazing in her beautiful white crystal embellished gown with a super long train.
It was like
just
17 feet.
Oh my gosh.
Huge.
She just
And her daughter Tracy looked amazing too. I
Yes.
love Tracy Ellis Ross.
yeah, she looks so
Mhm.
gorgeous. And then former Vice President Kamala Harris, she made a surprise appearance wearing a black and off-white gown with a modest train, but it was beautiful. Bad Bunny, he paid homage to Puerto Rico with his chocolate brown Prada suit. Madonna strode up to the Met Gala like a G with a silk champagne colored suit and smoking a cigar. So I was like, okay. But many of the best dressed honorable mentions included Janelle Monáe. You had Coleman Domingo, who honored Andre Leon Talley. And then you had Tiana Taylor, Zendaya, Jodie
Mhm.
Turner Smith.
Andre
Mm.
3000 had a mini Steinway piano. Did I steal your thunder with that one? I'm
No,
sorry.
no. Yeah, I left him out, so I'm glad you brought him in. But
Yeah.
he killed it. But yeah, the Met Gala theme this year left many people asking the question, like, what is Black dandyism? So Black dandyism is a cultural movement and fashion style which began in the late 19th, early 20th century, where Black people use clothing and personal style as a
Black
form.
men specifically.
Mhm.
Black
Keep
men,
talking.
yes.
We got amplify the brothers. Come on.
Mhm.
Yes, as a form of self-expression and a way to address societal limitations.
That's right.
So this started after emancipation and it gained traction
That's
during
right.
the Harlem Renaissance. So it's about being impeccably groomed and well dressed.
Yeah.
And also in what I thought was super cool was that in 1917, the Black Dandyists held a silent protest parade where there was 10,000 Black individuals in formal wear marching down Fifth Avenue in New York City's Manhattan to protest Jim Crow era discrimination.
That's right.
So that was just amazing. Like, and you know, see, I know you're heavy in fashion.
Yeah.
What do you think about?
We're going to
this
talk
whole-
about that because we only got a minute left, but I want to revisit that because that particular piece that you're talking about need to be amplified more because that's one thing that always flies under the radar. We got about 30 seconds left. I want you to give me one last thought. Everybody give me one last thought real quick.
Yeah, I just say, like, I don't know, you caught me off guard with the
That's all
last
good.
thought, but
Hold
like,
on.
yeah, like I always say, live life to the fullest. That's my little piece of advice.
No doubt. Real quick, we talk weeklies after the talk of WPPMLP Philadelphia 106.5 FM. We talk weeklies after the talk with your boy Charles Gergen. The beautiful
Classy
and the beautiful
Lawrence
and the beautiful.
Tanisha Beijing.
And we'll be back next week, y'all. I don't want y'all to go nowhere. We talk weekly and we out here like last year. Holla.
Peace.
All right, now that we're off the radio, go ahead. Go ahead. I want you to finish your piece because I know everybody was listening. So we're on the radio live, right? And so we got to go through automation. I was like, so make sure.
Yeah.
So now we're on automation, so it goes to the radio stuff now.
Yeah.
So go ahead, finish your thought because we still recording now.
What I would like to say, and this just came to me. I've been last couple months, I've been like really big on self-care, which I think is extremely important. Like we're going through some, times where it's getting difficult, and even more difficult for some people. So I think it's important that a lot of people focus on self-care, the meditation, anything that you can do to kind of like take care of your mental health. Like that's so important right now. So yeah, I just want to emphasize that.
No doubt. What about you?
Definitely want to co-sign the taking care of yourself at the end of every meeting. It used to be, what's going to be your joy today? But then the election happened. So now I say, how are you going to be kind to yourself? Because no matter what your day is like, you have to find time to be kind to yourself. There might not be anyone else who has that on their to-do list. And so that is so important. And going and seeing Sinners was definitely on my self-care. But it's interesting that both Sinners and the Met Gala has the Jim Crow kind of historical pieces in it. And, we are 100 years from it. And yet, there's so much angst, the same kind of angst that you see in both of those, in the movie. And then also in the dressing of like, I am going to put on all my finery almost as an armor. Like you see that now of people, whether they choose to totally like move away from elections in the political space or like, I need to take care of myself. So I need to like not be involved, or people who are all in, I think there's definitely so much of like history and legacy, and you have to find your own balance with voting. But I do implore people like to make sure that they find some time to carve out to vote your values and to talk with people. It's definitely not a simple, I can just like, look, I'll press these buttons, I can move on. You
Mm-mm.
definitely have to put in the time, but
Yeah.
like anything, it is worth it. I wish there was an Ozempic for
Right?
for this, but for some things there's not, and like that's part of the beauty of it. And
Mm.
so May 20th is when
Okay,
we
that's how
vote,
you
but
vote.
it is important to be a good citizen, a good resident if you are not a citizen, to be a good resident every day and to do that work, whether it's historical or current, and also to take care of yourself.
That's right. What time did the poll open and close?
So you can vote as early as 7 a.m. Some people in my precinct love to be the very first person. And as long as you are in line by 8 p.m., you're able to vote. We definitely don't expect there to be a huge line of people. If you're not available on Tuesdays, you can also go to our satellite election offices. There are 10 around the city, including City Hall, where you can go up until Tuesday. You can request a mail-in ballot Tuesday by 5. So there are satellite election offices all over the city. You don't have to go to the one in your neighborhood. You can go wherever. It's easiest for you. You can request a mail-in ballot. You can ask questions there. You can fill it out. You can drop it off. PA does not have early voting, but technically you can request that mail-in ballot, and that you can use all the way up till election day and drop off.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Wow.
Interesting. All
This is
right, no doubt.
awesome.
How can I get in contact with you? All that good old stuff.
I would love for people to go to 70.org. It's the number. 70.org is our website. That's where you can find our interactive voter guide, so that you can find out all about those judges. You can find out more about the ballot questions. If you're interested in being a poll worker, you're like, why are the kids only able to get this $200
Right.
plus $50 for the training? You can find more about that at Be a Poll Worker. If you would love to have, there's so many nonprofits that I go out to all around the city, and they have me come in and do presentations, hand out materials. People can contact me at can I say my email?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Then so it's tbezue, TBEZUE at 70.org. Email me. I will do things virtually. I'll come out. Look, you need me to bring my own projector. I got you. I'm all about making sure that every single voter is informed and feels confident.
I love your name. You need like a
No,
perfume or
yeah,
a color or
exactly.
something like that.
Thank you.
Bijou.
Thank
This
you.
color is Bijou. That's what I have.
wow.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All right, give that holler at me, Classy Lee.
I forgot the question.
um,
Oh, wait. Okay. Yes. All right. It was so packed with a lot of information.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's good information. So I do have a quote. The quote is not my quote, but it's a quote that I go by. Is you have to live life forward to understand it backwards. And I definitely agree with both Sizzle and Tanisha about being kind to yourself. I want women specifically to know that everyone, but specifically women, the goal is to get old. That's the goal. And as we age, we think that we
That's the
have to
flex,
be
Right.
perfect. And we're doing all these things to try to keep the youth in us. And no, your wrinkles, your gray hair, all those things, they exemplify you being seasoned and you being wisdom and you going through things and experience, and that you're able to talk to the younger generation about what you've been through. That's the thing where seasoned women, they have experience that they can share. The younger ones don't. They haven't lived as long as you have. Two other things I want to add to that is I did see the Met Gala. You all looked beautiful. See where Fabulous Five, the watch party. Y'all looked gorgeous. I seen it on Facebook, and you had the right idea with the top hats, which is the two favorites of mine were Tiana Taylor and Whoopi Goldberg. Like
yes,
Whoopi
I didn't
did.
see her.
Oh my gosh, I
And
was like,
she looked good after the View. It was like something
yes,
happened. Like
yes, I
on
loved
The
with
View
Whoopi.
after that,
Whoopi just would. I just loved what
She
she
looked
was
really
wearing.
good.
Yes,
Yeah.
and my girl Monet, she did. She kept it. Yeah, she kept what was
Mhm.
supposed to be worn. And then with Sinners, I definitely seen that there was a lot of different gems and impact. And I don't want to give out any spoilers, but even that with the way they dressed, the way they approached it, it was like
Yeah.
even the younger cousin who was in there. That's not a spoiler, but even the young people knew how to be appropriate. My generation growing up, it was like, if you're going to church, if you're going to eat dinner, you had to get up and get dressed in a certain
Yeah.
way. And I know that everything can't go back because we want to be progressive, but some things do have to be back to basics, where nothing's new under the sun. Everything that comes around, what's old becomes new and what's new becomes old. So I think we're starting to understand to get back to that. So
No, no.
that's
Well,
what I
I'm
have.
gonna just tell you, because you mentioned church, and it's a whole nother story about Sunday's best that I won't get into. But when we
Mhm.
talk about certain movements and the reason why we dress the way that we do, even dandyism, and the
Mhm.
reason why that's so profound, we'll get into that. Because I mean, fashion, we always put the sauce in everything anyway. You already know that black
Mhm.
folk, that's what we do,
I
right?
didn't know it was a name for it. I like it.
What, dandyism?
Dandyism.
Yeah, man, that's a movement. It's not just a look.
Mm.
It was a protest. It was to make a statement, a visual statement. It's one of those things. Yeah, I can do it, but let me show you how to really do it, man. And so there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. We talk weekly after the talk. I'm sorry, I got something in my mouth, man. I got Tic Tacs on. I'm just like, that's why I sound like that. What a dynamic show.
Excellent.
Excellent show. Has some fantastic guests. We have family in the house, who will be here at least once a month, recurring, host of ours that we talk weekly. We in the building. So I want you guys to go. Yeah. We'll see you next week. I don't know who we have next week. I never know.
Same
until-
time though.
Yeah,
Same
same
channel.
back time, same back channel. You already know we talk weekly, y'all. We out here like last year. Peace.
Peace.
Peace, y'all.